Imagine being paid around €100 million in a year, while barely stepping onto the pitch. That is the kind of headline Neymar has lived inside. A football superstar whose income has often felt bigger than the game itself. Multiple reports tied his Saudi move to an annual wage in the neighborhood of €101 million. A number so extreme it stops sounding like sport and starts sounding like a business empire. But here is the paradox. Neymar is one of the most marketable names in football. Yet his recent years were also shaped by injuries and long absences that made fans ask the same brutal question again and again. How can someone earn that much when the moments on the field are so few? Reuters reported he played only 7 matches for the Saudi club before the contract ended by mutual agreement, and that short stint became part of the mystery, not the explanation. Now rewind. This is the same player who triggered the most famous financial earthquake in modern football. The €222 million release clause that took him from Barcelona to Paris Saint-Germain and rewrote the market overnight. So where did Neymar's money really come from? Was it salary? Was it sponsorship power? Or was it one perfectly timed decision that turned his name into a global asset? Because in Neymar's story, the biggest numbers are never just numbers. And one single contract changed everything. Before Neymar became a global logo, he was a kid in coastal São Paulo state. Growing up far from the polished stadium lights people now associate with his name. The earliest version of his story is not about endorsements or transfer fees. It is about streets, improvised games, and that Brazilian habit of turning any open space into a pitch. In Praia Grande, the kind of neighborhood where kids play barefoot and the ball does not even need to be perfect, Neymar's relationship with football started as pure joy, not strategy. His father has described that period as real life, a low social quality area where the family lived close to an old dumping ground. And they stayed there for years before Neymar turned professional. What matters here is not the scenery, it is the rhythm. Street football and small-sided games force you to make decisions faster than your body wants to move. You learn to protect the ball, to escape pressure, to improvise without fear of being laughed at. Neymar's first coach, Batinho, recalled seeing him as a very young boy and immediately noticing the agility and coordination that separated him from the crowd. That early recognition is important because it hints at the first invisible ingredient in his future income story. People around Neymar did not just believe he was talented. They believed he was rare. Then comes the family piece, and it is impossible to understand Neymar's career without it. His father was not only present, he was involved, guiding decisions, protecting opportunities, and thinking ahead in a way most families cannot afford to do. In the Red Bull profile, Neymar Sr. talks about treating his son's development with a goal in mind, and even mentions drawing up an early contract for training when Neymar was 12. That is not a normal sentence in a normal childhood, and it signals something crucial. Neymar's path was shaped by love, yes, but also by planning. You can almost see the outline of a future machine being built long before the world ever called him a superstar. As Neymar's name grew in Brazil, Santos became the stage where the country watched him turn potential into spectacle. The dribbles brought attention, the goals brought pressure, and the pressure brought a new type of danger. Not the kind that tackles your ankle, but the kind that changes how you live. When you become the most talked about teenager in a football-obsessed country, every decision gets louder. Every rumor becomes a headline. Every contract negotiation turns into a tug of war between giants. And this is where we hit the breaking point that most fans overlook. Neymar was still a teenager when Europe started circling, and the stakes were not only about football success. They were about risk, liability, and a terrifying possibility. One serious injury could have turned a dream into a financial nightmare. According to The Guardian's reporting on the behind-the-scenes battle to sign him, there was a plan that included major upfront payments and a penalty clause, so large it forced Neymar's father to take out an insurance policy in case Neymar was seriously injured before the move. Think about that for a second. A young player, still building his body, carrying not just a nation's hopes, but a financial burden so heavy that an injury could trigger consequences measured in tens of millions. This is not just drama. This is the moment Neymar stopped being only a footballer in development and started becoming an asset that needed to be managed like a business. The pressure was not simply, can he make it in Europe? The pressure was, can he stay healthy long enough for the deal to happen? And can the people around him navigate a marketplace where Barcelona and Real Madrid were both pushing, each with their own promises, their own leverage? and their own financial traps. Then the door opens. Behind closed doors, Neymar's heart was reportedly set on Barcelona, and the story shifts from a Brazilian prodigy to a future global celebrity. He was no longer just preparing for a transfer. He was preparing for a new identity. A player who would step into a club that could amplify his image to every corner of the planet. And once that door opened, the money story could finally begin. Because the next phase is where Neymar's income stops being a bonus and starts becoming a system. Neymar's first real money story does not begin in Europe. It begins the moment Brazil realized it was not watching a talented teenager, but a future global product. At Santos, the goals and dribbles were already turning into something that could be sold, replayed, sponsored, and packaged. When people talk about his early wealth, they often picture European wages, but the first jump came from something more modern and arguably more powerful. Companies paying for attention. By 2013, before he had even played a single competitive match for Barcelona, Forbes listed Neymar among the world's best-paid soccer players, reporting total earnings around $19.5 million, with sponsors like Nike and others already attached to his name. That number matters because it proves the pattern early. Neymar was not only earning because he was playing football, he was earning because people were watching him. And here is the first hook that changes how you see his rise. At around 21 years old, he was already generating endorsement money comparable to the salaries of established European stars. Then the deal that shaped the next decade of his income arrives. In 2011, Neymar signed a long-term contract with Nike that multiple reports later described as worth over $100 million. Even if you label that figure as reported rather than officially confirmed, the implication is explosive. A player still in Brazil, still developing, was already valued like a global superstar. This was not a small sponsorship to cover boots and a few commercials. This was a commitment that treated Neymar like a long-range investment, the kind usually reserved for icons. Now picture what that does to a young athlete's financial reality. Imagine being a teenager who can still walk down the street in Santos, but your signature can unlock millions. This is where Neymar's income begins to separate into two worlds. In one world, there is football money, match bonuses, club salary, potential transfer payments. In the other world, there is brand money, the value of being Neymar, even on weeks when the schedule is quiet. Forbes, in its 2013 highest-paid athletes list entry for him, broke that total earnings figure into roughly $10.5 million from salary and winnings, and about $10 million from endorsements. That split is almost a perfect warning sign of what will happen later in his career. For Neymar, the commercial side was never an extra. It was a second engine. So the first big jump is not a single paycheck. It is the moment the market decides Neymar's name is worth as much as Neymar's minutes. And once that is true, the next step becomes inevitable. You move the player to a stage big enough to multiply that value. When he joined Barcelona in 2013, Neymar did not just sign with a club. He plugged into the most powerful attention machine in football. A platform that could turn every goal into a global clip and every celebration into a sponsorship opportunity. Financially, he entered a salary ecosystem where the top names were measured in millions per year, not thousands per month. For example, a salary database listing Barcelona's 2013 to 2014 squad shows Neymar on an annual figure around €12.54 million, placing him among the club's top earners in that period. It is important to treat these databases as reported figures, not official club disclosures, but they still help you understand the scale. The difference between being well paid in Brazil and being paid like a global star in Europe is not a gentle climb. It is a vertical wall. And then comes the detail that reveals how quickly Neymar's money could spike based on performance and exposure. Spanish sports reporting about his earlier Barcelona contract described a base salary around €9.18 million gross per year with significant incentives attached, such as large payments for team achievements. This is where the story becomes cinematic, because it turns every trophy into a financial lever. Win more, earn more. Go deeper in the Champions League, earn more. Become part of a historic season, earn more. Here is the moment you should pause and really feel the before and after. In the space of a few years, Neymar went from being a gifted kid building fame at Santos to a young man whose annual earnings were being discussed in the same breath as the sport's financial elite. And he did it while still being early in his prime. If you want a simple comparison, Imagine the difference between a good salary and a life-changing salary. Then multiply it by the fact that Neymar was being paid by two markets at once, the club market and the attention market. But the most important milestone of this part is not the exact euro figure. It is the shift in leverage. At Santos, Neymar was valuable. At Barcelona, Neymar became unavoidable. Every time he stepped onto the pitch alongside Messi and the rest of that era's stars, his brand value either climbed or faced judgment in real time. That pressure is brutal, but it is also profitable, because football at that level is a weekly advertisement that no brand can buy anywhere else. And that is why this part ends with a quiet but powerful cliffhanger. Neymar's first income jump was the moment endorsements became equal to wages. His second jump was moving to a club that could multiply both. Now comes the real question. Once you are that marketable, how do you turn it into a machine that prints money even when football disappears for a while? Because Neymar's next chapter is where the income stops looking like a salary and starts looking like an empire. If you only look at Neymar's salary, you will understand his wealth, but you will not understand his power. The real money machine begins when a player becomes a walking media network. A face that can sell shoes, energy drinks, fashion, streaming clicks, and headlines across multiple continents. Neymar reached that level early, and once he did, his income stopped behaving like a normal athlete's paycheck. It started behaving like a portfolio, one stream feeding the next, attention turning into leverage, leverage turning into contracts, contracts turning into more attention. To see how this machine works, you have to stop thinking in one line and start thinking in lanes. Neymar's money moved through several lanes at the same time: club wages and bonuses, sportswear sponsorship, commercial endorsements beyond boots, social media influence, and the quieter layer that matters most for longevity: business structures that can carry value even when the body cannot. And now we reveal the top 3 biggest income streams that shaped Neymar's empire, one at a time. Because each one tells you something different about why his name keeps generating money, even when the football side gets complicated. The third biggest stream is the one many fans underestimate because it looks like simple fame: social media and commercial appearances. Neymar did not just become famous. He became monetizable at scale. Forbes has consistently separated on-field earnings from off-field income for top athletes. And Neymar appears on its highest-paid athlete rankings and profile pages precisely because his off-field money is significant, not decorative. When you have that kind of global recognition, a single post, a single appearance, a single campaign can carry a price tag that ordinary athletes would need years to earn. Even though exact per-post numbers vary widely by methodology and are often estimates, the repeated pattern across media reporting is the same. Neymar's audience is an asset, and brands pay for access to it. Here is the detail that makes this stream feel real. Social platforms do not pay a superstar because he needs the money. They pay because he can move attention instantly. A footballer with 100 million followers does not need a stadium to reach millions. He can reach them at breakfast. That creates a unique kind of earning power, because it is not tied to match day, and it does not require 90 minutes of perfect health. When Neymar posts, he is not only communicating with fans, he is performing distribution for any brand attached to him. That is why social media and appearances become an income lane that stays open even when the season disappears. But what made him wealthy long-term was the fact that attention can be converted into contracts regardless of injuries, as long as the personal brand remains valuable. Now the second biggest stream, and this is where Neymar's story becomes almost unbelievable: sportswear sponsorship, especially the Boots deal. Because boots are not just equipment, they are identity. Neymar spent years linked to Nike, and when that relationship ended, it became news not only because of the brand, but because of the scale of the partnership. Reuters reported on Nike's explanation for ending the endorsement relationship, noting that Neymar had been signed with Nike for 15 years and that the contract ended with years remaining, according to reporting that cited a person familiar with the matter. That alone tells you something. This was not a short-term marketing trial. This was a long-term investment that treated Neymar as one of the faces of football. Then comes the pivot. Neymar moved into a partnership with Puma, and reports around the time described it as a major deal, even calling it a record-breaking contract in some football marketing coverage. The exact figures widely circulated in the media are not officially published in a single transparent document, so any number should be treated as reported, not confirmed. But the scale is the point. If sponsors are willing to put that kind of annual value behind one athlete, it means they are buying more than performance. They are buying cultural relevance, youth appeal, style, and global reach. And here is where the money machine becomes clear. A boot sponsorship is not only about selling boots. It sets the tone for every other partnership. Once a brand like Nike or Puma stamps its identity on you, other brands treat you differently. They see you as safe enough, famous enough, and valuable enough to justify big campaigns. This stream becomes the credibility badge that helps unlock the next deals. But what made him wealthy long-term was the ability to move from one mega-sponsor ecosystem to another without losing the aura that makes brands pay premium rates. There are two major contract eras that define this lane. The first is Europe's peak era, where playing for clubs like Barcelona and Paris Saint-Germain did not only elevate the football legacy, it elevated earning capacity. Even when clubs do not publish exact salaries, the business reality is visible in how the market treated Neymar. He was not negotiated like a normal star. He was negotiated like a franchise. The second era is the Saudi move, where the reported wage levels reached a point that felt almost detached from the sport. Forbes itself, in its broader athlete coverage, has consistently shown that footballers who sign major deals in new markets can spike on-field earnings in ways that dwarf previous levels. And Neymar appears in those discussions as part of the highest-paid athlete landscape. The key insight is this. Salary is not only money, it is also positioning. When a club pays you an extraordinary wage, it signals to sponsors, media, and even other leagues that you are still an elite attention magnet. That keeps the endorsement lane alive. It keeps the appearance lane alive. It keeps the narrative alive. And Neymar's story shows how club wages can become fuel for the entire ecosystem, even when injuries reduce minutes. It is why the Saudi chapter mattered so much in the money narrative, because it produced numbers that forced the world to talk about Neymar again. And attention is the raw material of every other stream. But what made him wealthy long-term was using club contracts not only as income, but as global visibility engines that refresh his brand value whenever the spotlight starts to fade. Now take a step back and look at the full system. Neymar's money machine is not one contract. It is a loop. A huge club deal creates headlines. Headlines create attention. Attention creates sponsorship leverage. Sponsorships create lifestyle visibility. Lifestyle visibility creates social media value. Social media value creates more sponsorships and appearances. And all of that loops back into negotiating power the next time he sits at the table with a club. Because clubs are not only buying a winger, they are buying global attention. But there is still one layer we have not fully opened yet. And it is the layer that separates short-term rich from long-term wealthy. The structures behind the scenes, the way money is managed, the way brand rights are handled. The way endorsements and image rights can be organized to protect earnings across borders and across career phases. Neymar's career has repeatedly shown that his financial life is not accidental. It has been shaped by planning, by brand strategy, by contracts that treat his name as intellectual property. And that brings us directly to the tension at the center of his income story. What happens when the on-field part becomes fragile, when the body cannot guarantee seasons of highlight reels? Does the machine keep printing money, or does it start to break? Because in the next chapter, Neymar's finances meet the harshest test any superstar can face. The moment when availability becomes a question mark. And the world starts asking whether the empire is built on football, or built on fame. Here is the hard truth that turns Neymar's income story into a real thriller. At the top level, football money is not only about talent. It is about availability. You can be a genius, you can be a global icon. You can sign the kind of contracts that make the world stare. But if your body cannot show up, the entire system gets stress tested. And for Neymar, that test arrived in the most brutal way possible. October 2023. Brazil are playing Uruguay in a World Cup qualifier. Then Neymar goes down. Not a small knock. Not the kind of pain you shake off. Reuters reported that Brazil's Football Federation said he ruptured the anterior cruciate ligament and meniscus in his left knee and would undergo surgery. Several months out, they said, that is the kind of sentence that changes everything for an athlete, because it is not a missed match. It is a lost season. It is lost rhythm. It is a pause button on the very thing that keeps the highlight reels flowing. Now ask yourself the question sponsors never say out loud. What is a superstar worth when the superstar is not on the pitch? Is he still Neymar, the global magnet? Or does the market quietly shift its attention to the next healthy headline? Because injuries do not just attack muscles. They attack momentum. And momentum is currency. Reuters later reported that Brazil's team doctor said Neymar would miss Copa America and was not expected to be fit until around August, with no shortcuts planned in the recovery. Think about the timing. A major international tournament gone. Months of silence during the part of the year when narratives are built. Months when new stars can take the spotlight. Months when brands and fans start asking, will he ever come back the same? And this is where the money lesson becomes sharp. Neymar's wealth was built on multiple streams, but the engine that powers all streams is relevance. On-field relevance creates highlights. Highlights create attention. Attention keeps sponsors paying premium rates. So what happens when the highlight machine stops? The club still pays salary, depending on contract terms. The brand still values the name, depending on risk. But the emotional fuel that keeps the entire ecosystem hot. Weekly brilliance disappears. Then you move to the Saudi chapter, and the contrast becomes almost surreal. Neymar joined Al Hilal in August 2023 with a deal that instantly became part of football's new money era. The numbers reported by different outlets vary. So any exact salary claim must be treated as estimated unless it comes from official documents. But what is confirmed is the outcome. The spell was dominated by injuries and limited minutes, and then the contract ended. Reuters reported that Neymar left Al Hilal by mutual agreement after playing only 7 matches for the club. 7 matches. In a football world that pays for weekly impact. That number is the definition of absence. Here is the tension that makes this climax unforgettable. Neymar became a symbol of enormous earnings. Yet the football itself became scarce. Fans asked, how is that possible? Critics said it is proof the money has gone crazy. Supporters said the contract was about more than minutes. It was about marketing and league visibility. And that is exactly the point. This is the moment Neymar's income story collides with a question bigger than him. In modern football, are clubs paying for performance, or are they paying for global attention? If you want to understand how dangerous this moment is, picture it like this. A club can handle a bad game. A club can handle a few weeks of poor form. But a club cannot easily justify a superstar contract when the superstar is absent for most of the calendar. The risk is not only sporting. It is reputational. It invites jokes. It invites anger. It invites the kind of narrative that can damage a brand relationship. Not because the player did something wrong, but because the public starts treating the player as a punchline. And then the off-field side gets dragged into the storm as well. Sponsors are not charities. They are investors. They do not only ask, is he famous? They ask, is he safe? Is he stable? Is he a clean bet? That is why the Nike breakup mattered, even though it happened earlier. Reuters reported Nike said it ended its deal with Neymar after non-cooperation in a sexual assault probe. Neymar denied wrongdoing, and the case details were contested in public statements. But the business impact is the key lesson. Brand deals can end not only because of performance, but because of risk. When the spotlight is on you, any controversy becomes part of your market price. So in this climax, Neymar faces a double squeeze. On one side, the body issue reduces the football supply. On the other side, the brand environment becomes more sensitive. That combination is exactly what breaks many superstar income stories, because it attacks both engines at once. And yet Neymar's story does not collapse. It adapts, because he is not only a player. He is a brand that has been built for years, with an audience that is still massive, with a name that still sells attention, even when the highlight reel is quiet. But ask the most uncomfortable question anyway. If Neymar can still generate huge money while missing huge football, what does that say about where his real value lives? Is it in goals and assists? Or is it in the ability to pull cameras, clicks, and headlines into whatever league, club, or campaign he touches? That is why the Al Hilal ending is not just a contract story. It is a turning point. The mutual termination reported by Reuters signals that the football side demanded a reset. The business side needed a new narrative. And Neymar needed the one thing money cannot buy at full price: a believable comeback story. So now we reach the sentence that changes everything for Part 6. Neymar's peak earnings were not only about being the best dribbler. They were about being the most valuable attention asset at the right moments. The injury era tested that value in public, brutally, and it forced the world to separate Neymar the footballer from Neymar the brand. So here is Neymar's income story, stripped down to its truth. His money did not come from a single season, a single sponsor, or a single lucky contract. It came from a sequence of moments where talent turned into attention turned into leverage, and leverage turned into deals that kept paying even when the football side became fragile. The first key point is this. Neymar's wealth began early because he became valuable to brands before he became fully proven in Europe. By 2013, Forbes was already putting him among the world's best-paid footballers, with total earnings reported around $19.5 million. And the striking detail was how quickly endorsements were matching what he earned on the pitch. That split is the blueprint of his entire career. For Neymar, fame was not a consequence. It was a parallel engine. The second key point is the turning point that rewired the market. The €222 million move from Barcelona to Paris Saint-Germain was not just a transfer fee. It was a global statement about what a superstar is worth. And it created a new salary universe for the sport. The Guardian's reporting on how that move unfolded captured the scale of the shock. And once the market accepted that number, Neymar's negotiating power and the value of his image entered a different stratosphere. The third key point is the sustainability test. Neymar's later years show why income is not the same as stability. Injuries, especially the ACL and meniscus rupture reported by Reuters in October 2023, are the harshest reminder that football is a physical business. And yet, even in that injury era, his brand remained powerful enough to keep the money narrative alive, which is why his short Saudi spell still became one of the most discussed salary stories on the planet. Now let's answer the number everyone wants. Neymar's precise current yearly income depends on contract terms, sponsorship activity, and the stage of his career. And those figures are not fully transparent in official public records. So any single total has to be treated as estimated. With that said, the most credible way to frame it is like this. At his peak, Neymar has appeared on Forbes' athlete lists and profile pages that track high-level earnings and place him among the sport's major earners over multiple years. And if you combine reported top-tier football wages with a superstar-level endorsement portfolio, his peak annual earnings plausibly sit in the tens of millions of dollars per year, with some reported years pushing far beyond that depending on the contract environment. That is an estimate, not a confirmed audit, but it fits the pattern described by repeated major reporting and the way the football market treated him. But here is the real conclusion that matters more than any one number. Neymar's financial story proves that modern football is not only a sport. It is an attention economy. The greatest earners are the players who can translate performance into global relevance, and then translate relevance into contracts that can survive injuries, controversies, and time. So the question is not just how rich Neymar is. The question is what happens next. Does he find the comeback story that makes the football side undeniable again? The kind of return that refreshes the entire brand? Or does he lean fully into the identity he has already built? A celebrity athlete whose name can still move markets, even when the pitch is no longer the main stage. Now your turn. Do you think Neymar's money was built more by football brilliance or by brand power? And who should we break down next? Messi, Ronaldo, Mbappe, or a surprise name you would never expect?